Hey, welcome everybody. On today's show, what happens when two tech giants pour billions of dollars into an AI company that sort of refuses to race to the finish line? We're talking about Anthropic, and they just released Claude 4. They're aiming for AI that can work, reason, and even code on its own. And as Amazon and Google jump in with massive investments, the stakes really couldn't be higher. Are they backing for a safer future, or is it just more of a hedging a bet against rivals like OpenAI and what they're working with Microsoft? Then we have the CEO, Dario Amodei, who predicts a world where single-person billion-dollar startups become possible and where most code gets written by AI, not humans. This vision stands apart from the usual move fast and break things approach. Instead, Anthropic is betting on safety and control, pushing their constitutional AI as the next big standard. And what really sets Anthropic apart, though, is their push for open standards and transparency. We've talked a lot about Model Context Protocol, or MCP, and how that acts as a universal, quote, USB port for AI, and is letting models securely connect to any data source or tool. And then when you combine that with their influential research papers, Anthropic is shaping the rules of how AI connects with the world. So, does this careful strategy set a new pace for the industry? Or does it risk falling behind others as they sprint ahead? That's what we're breaking down today. The bold moves, the big money, the real stakes behind Anthropic's 2025 strategy and vision. This is the Daily AI Show. Today is May 27th, 2025. We are live Monday through Friday. If this happens to be the first time you've ever found our lovely faces, we're here Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We have not missed a Monday through Friday since we started. And this is episode 472. And we'll be hitting about our 2-year mark come around August 7th. With me today to talk about all things Anthropic, which I'm super excited about. Been looking forward to the show. We have Beth, Jimmy, Andy, and Brian. So guys, if you can't tell by my enthusiasm today, I'm excited about this. I think Anthropic is one of the most fascinating, interesting companies to talk about in the landscape of AI. Certainly, there gets a lot of press to OpenAI. OpenAI is very good about getting in the news cycle and staying there. Sometimes with even like maybe smaller updates. We've certainly seen how OpenAI has come out and they'll put out something strategically right after a Google announcement or Anthropic or Microsoft or whatever, Amazon too. But Anthropic, I don't know. Maybe it's because of their foundation, how they started. And by the way, if for those of us joining, or for those that are joining us who maybe aren't as familiar with Anthropic, here's something you probably should know, just as a quick starter point. So I'm just going to read a bit of this from the Perplexity. Anthropic's founding story represents one of the most significant departures in AI industry, born from fundamental disagreements about the direction and pace of artificial intelligence development. The company emerged in 2021 when 11 OpenAI employees, led by siblings Dario and Daniela Amodei, left OpenAI due to concerns about the organization's evolving priorities and approach to AI safety. Uh, Dario had served as a vice president of research at OpenAI and played a key role in developing GPT-2 and 3. He became increasingly concerned about the commercialization pressures following Microsoft's substantial investment in OpenAI. That's interesting because Anthropic has some substantial investments too, as we noted in the beginning. The Amodei siblings and their colleagues feared that the commercial priorities would overshadow safety considerations, potentially leading to the development of powerful AI systems without adequate safeguards against misuse or uncontrolled development. Now, all that to say that, couple things here. Anthropic is valued at about $62 billion. Not exactly a small company, but by AI standards, these numbers seem to get thrown around. Billions and trillions seem to get thrown around a lot these days, which is weird. That's a weird shift to me in the last 3-4 years, where that wouldn't have happened pre-ChatGPT era, right? You know, the November of 2022. And also, Amazon has invested $8 billion. Google has invested $2 billion. So we're going to get into that conversation too, right, guys? Because hold on a second. Isn't Amazon and Google, aren't they both sort of competing against Anthropic? And is this a potential play for maybe a takeover down the road, or not a takeover, but a buyout of Anthropic? I don't think so. I think there's actually more strategic moves here. So without me continuing on, would love to throw it over to you guys. Do you guys want to add anything to that sort of origin story to kind of get our audience set? Or do you feel like that's it in a nutshell?
Uh,
I think you did a good job.
and I'm gonna say when you hear Dario talk about it, he, like, doesn't put as much emphasis on the safety. That's a little bit of the story that's moved around him. What he says is a little more like, "Hey, I wanted to be in control of, doing the investment the way I thought I was that it needed to happen, and I didn't wanna have to fight within OpenAI for my vision for to move forward." But, but they definitely have a different approach to safety, but it's interesting that he de-emphasizes it when everyone else emphasizes it.
Especially considering they started in their foundation as a constitutional AI, which sets them apart drastically from the way OpenAI, set those, and I would have to look, I guess, for Google. I'm not really sure, but I don't think to my knowledge, Anthropic's the only one that has a constitutional AI, correct?
It's correct, but given the sort of things that he said, I wonder if that was a speed and, like, efficiency move, that just turned out to be, like, really brilliant as well. Because it's not like he says, "Yes, I had a vision came to me in the middle of the night that we had to be safer, and I had all of this idea about constitutional AI and safety." Now, I haven't talked to him. Maybe he does say that, it doesn't make the news or the show, but I think that's really interesting.
Well, we can get into it more, but I will bring this up because this is 100% on me. I'm just trying to scroll till I can get a little more information. Okay, I feel bad about this because I do feel like I keep on top of this research. I did not know Dario had a sibling. I did not know that she worked at OpenAI. I did not know that she was a co-founder of Anthropic. That is not to me what has necessarily been in the news. Or I'm just doing a poor job of hearing all the voices. And I'll admit it, there's some bias, there was some bias in there too. So naturally, I was like, what's Daniela talking about? Because I know what Dario's talking about. And so this is some of the things that Perplexity brought back to me. And really, we don't have to go through all of them, but what I see from like her sound bites and stuff is that she's not maybe publicly vocal as her brother Dario, but her focus is about the constitution AI, but it's really about that user experience. And so you see a lot about creativity, learning, equity is a huge thing, which I love that she's talking about that, saying that I want Claude, for lack of a better term, to be like this co-pilot to you, this person that's sitting next to you, this AI that's sitting next to you, that's helping you through life. But I want to make sure everybody gets equity. Everybody has access, equal access to something like this because it's going to revolutionize things. She talks a lot about transparency and interpretability, uh, and then safety and ethics as core principles. But that's also, to your point, Beth, maybe core principles for on purpose or not, they fell into the core principles of safety and ethics. But I do think that is a big part of Anthropic's vision here.
And maybe Dario doesn't talk about it much because it's like, that's my sister's thing. So I don't have an origin story other than my sister said we need to do it this way.
Yeah.
All of this is
Interesting.
speculation. Sorry, let's get into real reactions.
No, no, yeah. I mean, Jimmy, Andy, obviously, look, there's time here to talk about Claude 4 as well, right? I mean, that's the big release, and that is a big part of this conversation. But we see new releases with models all the time with different mod and stuff. So it's like I guess what's fun to me about this conversation is like, yeah, but what's different about Anthropic? They're different in the way that they approach enterprise. When you look at what they did with Amazon and the way Amazon said, "Hey, you got to use our chips," which validates Amazon against Nvidia. It says that their chips are of this, I think it's Titan, right? Their chips are of the same level because Claude is willing to do it. Look what GitHub did. And GitHub said, we're using Claude for our coding. Another validation step. And by not moving fast and breaking things as much, I think they're really doing a play. And again, I will give credit where credit's due. Rachel Woods, whether she had insight to this or not, for the AI exchange, said 2 years ago, at least in some comment I saw her on it, I think inside the AI exchange, I think Anthropic's play is going to be more towards enterprise. And man, are they making some huge strides there. It is like $3 billion worth of their business and revenue is on the enterprise. Where have we seen that before? AWS.
Mm, wow.
Yeah. So my comment is that from the outset, I've maybe just because it's my nature and my personality, I've uh, honored Anthropic as having come from a more principled place than many of the other initiatives that are out there. And I felt that despite it being over the course of those last 2 years, often behind in terms of features that have made for the huge popularization of OpenAI, that nonetheless they deserve our support. And so I've been a subscriber to Claude, even though I don't use it nearly in the same proportions that I do other tools out there, except that what has really emerged is that Claude 3.7 Sonnet and now Claude 4 Sonnet ended up being the platform of choice for all kinds of coding related tools. And so, yes, when, a company like Amazon early on offered, Claude as one of the options, that was a really important sort of validation signal. And then more recently, I've been complaining to you as my colleagues about how, the Lovable platform, which I've invested a huge amount of my time in, was starting to, reach point of recurring failures. And then magically, I communicated with support, and because of the complexity of the app and the number of edit requests that I end up generating on a monthly basis, they responded to me very quickly and with detailed responses. And in direct reply to my question, when are we going to have access to a more advanced model than is currently apparently available? Because Lovable doesn't really typically disclose which models are operating behind the scenes in their
Oh,
agent mode. What's that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's not like you can do a quick search and say, "Well, which models are actually being used by Lovable?" They have their own assembly of coding agents, but I can tell you if it's not available or is not well known by other people, that support at Lovable, and it's a small team, remember, Lovable has something on the order of 20 or 30 employees. It's not a huge company. They told me that, um, you know, we have something in the pipeline. And then when Claude 4 was released, they said Claude 4 is now being used inside Lovable. So th-
That's
all
telling.
all these major players out there, they know the distinctive capabilities of Claude's coding,
Mhm.
agentic coding capabilities. So really, really at the forefront, I think, in that arena particularly, which is turning out, I think, to a large degree to be the major arena in which agents are currently operating and will ultimately operate, is in the development of software in a bespoke way based purely by text driven or voice driven commands by people who are operating as product managers in concert with the engineering capabilities that Claude has offered. Now, I will hasten to add that um, Gemini Pro 2.5 experimental is equally capable. And Google has this really great platform that includes an enormous range. We're talking about valuation differences. Like here's little Anthropic at 64 billion. I don't know what the current market value of the capitalization of Google is, but it's astronomical by
Right.
comparison. And so they have resources far beyond what Anthropic has, and yet Claude 4 is the model of choice for many of these, coding vibe coding type platforms, and they feature that. By the way, Perplexity, if you have your choice of models in the Pro account, and, Claude 4 is right there.
100%. And you said something that like Dario has said, like I told you, like he's made some bold claims. Now, when you look at like just on the first one of like we've talked about this, a one person $1 billion company. We've talked about different variations of that. And how if you just go back to like 2012, Instagram had a $1 billion valuation with like 11 or 12 people 13 years ago, right? So you look at that model and you go, "Oh, like we weren't far 13 years ago and there was no generative AI." So like his claim, that one's not as bold. But what gets a lot of people ruffles up their feathers is what you were just talking about, Andy, on the coding side, because Dario has been pretty straightforward about where he thinks this is going. And he said, 90% of all AI generated code, a 90% AI generated code within 3 to 6 months, near total automation, 100% within 12 months. And then they've gone on to say that I think 80% of their own code base at Anthropic is built by Claude. And he's been very outspoken about this. And I would say, I mean, if Carr was here too, he'd say it too. Like, that doesn't mean other people aren't disagreeing with him, saying, hold on, I don't think you're there. But considering what he publicly says with what he clearly knows, we just talked about how Anthropic is not necessarily quick to release. They hold things back until they feel like they've done their internal process. And I'm not smashing on any of the other companies that maybe whatever their security policies are. But Anthropic obviously seems to have, I wouldn't say obviously, they seem to have a play of, if Claude 4 comes out, it met high stringent safety standards and guidelines. I get that impression. That's my impression of it. So when somebody who's in that position is publicly saying, who has one of the leading code-based, Lovable, GitHub, other people going in at Amazon, right, has one of the leading AI coders out there, is saying 3 to 6 months or 12 months, or who even cares if it's 24 months? That's that's massive, that the majority of the coders in the world, the majority, not your highest level, super high specialized niche. I'm not talking about those coders. There's always going to be a place for people in there who have specific niche that AI has not reached yet. But for the vast majority of people, for your folks that are on Fiverr and are charging for coding for X amount to do a certain task, Dario seems to be saying that's going to be taken care of with AI and soon, which is really, really interesting.
So I think one of the things that you said in the beginning may be a part of the reason that this has become their wheelhouse, and that is, you said Daniela was um, the person who had the vision. We have to make this usable for people.
Mhm.
And what I am interested in about that is that I don't hear that from any other leader in an organization, right? So Google is I would be very surprised if someone at the top of Google was like, "We really care about the user's experience in this," because that does not trickle down. That like OpenAI was research, right? They didn't expect it to pop off. That was the excuse many years ago. Many, what, two and a couple months
That's right.
is
Yeah,
many?
many years ago. A
No,
long
no,
time ago
no.
and a far, far away.
But, um, but again, they have seemed to fall short on what it's like to use their system, right? What the
Agreed.
actual users are experiencing. And I think that may be part of the difference in Claude, is that someone at the top really cares about that.
I 100%. Jimmy, you've been quiet so far. Thoughts on this? First of all, would you call yourself a fanboy of Anthropic? I always feel like, Jimmy, you're kind of like, I like you always say, like, listen, I like to have a lot of control here. I don't want people telling me what I should be thinking. You know what I mean? So like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Jimmy, because I bet you have a unique perspective on this.
Sure, sure. I think we're still in the space of um, plat platform agnostic, right? So there's things are moving so quickly that and the changes that are happening are usually so significant that you need to go check out the platform or check out what the offering is. And it's the same thing with Anthropic, right? Uh, and this kind of goes back to who the focus is, right? I think what we're seeing here is Anthropic's goal is the coders, the programmers, the developers, I should say, the developers and that enterprise space. While they do have a great interface for people to just use the models, right, through Claude directly on the site and things like that. Um, you can see that other companies have chosen a definite, B2C kind of situation here, and that's like OpenAI. They want their own whole platform. They want to be Google and Microsoft before before Google and Microsoft can do all their stuff. So, but with Anthropic, what I think is and this is sort of the narrative that's been built around things that like Beth was saying earlier. Um, but because they have this particular goal or focus in who their customer base is, certain things come with that, right? Having uh, we can call it the security or the safety rules and things like that, but they're far more transparent. And that's the big thing that I like about them is they're far more transparent than all the other organizations are. And that could just be because they're relatively smaller. I mean, you're talking billions of dollars and,
Yeah.
hundreds or thousands of employees. So I don't know if that's considered small, but they're smaller than Google. They're smaller than OpenAI, and but they still because of that. I think they can maintain that more focused approach with transparency, with the tool set, things like that. The other thing that they seem to be focused on is building out all of the now I'm self-conscious infrastructure pieces. The
Only I think I never hear it unless you call it out, Jimmy, so you should
Right.
just totally roll with it because
Gotcha. So
otherwise I'm gonna counter with a firefighter story every single time to
right.
beat
So but they seem to be focused on this infrastructure play where they're building out technologies like MCP, right? And MCP is been picked up and adopted by the other major players as, oh, this shortcuts a lot of things for us too. So yes, we're going to go ahead and support it. There's been a huge drive from developers to support this protocol, and this is something that we may look back on like when we talk about, oh, when was the big AI shift? And we're looking at it historically, and what are the key protocols and technologies that were needed to make this whole agentic, wonderland unfold for us. And MCP might be talked about in that kind of thing, like how we talk about TCP IP and we talk about Ethernet and things like that from internet past. Now, I I do wanna say that because of their approach, because of the things that they're building, because of the transparency, that has definitely moved my focus into paying more attention to them. So they've definitely captured my attention there. Um, what what I think, though, is it won't be as much of I don't think I'll be living on their web interface. I don't think I'll be living on their client interface. I think where their play has been, and I think what will attract me the most is the direct access, the backend access, the API access, things like that. And these latest things that they've talked about is, MCP via the API. They're talking about improvements to their files API, and there's some big players already talking about how they're using these new technologies with the new models, right? With Opus 4 and things like that. JP Morgan has used it do um to do real-time risk modeling, right? And they do millions of trades per hour, and they're using, code execution to replace like ETL pipelines, right? So the way we used to do these automations is we'd have all of these components that are built to move data and do some sort of process it from step to step to step to step. But now Opus 4 is so good at recognizing what the context is
it.
and pulling the tools that are needed through things like MCP to process all of that without having to use a dozen different tools. You can do 3, and they're all containerized in the execution tool.
So I have a current, counterpoint to shift the conversation towards some of the jankiness that Claude 4 has exhibited and people have talked about. I just this morning I said, well, I'm going to take my already connected GitHub account to Claude. One of the nice new features in the Claude interface is you can connect through integrations to your Google Drive, your Gmail. You can connect to GitHub, importantly, because they have this developer focus. And GitHub is a repository for your code. It's automatically, when you make changes to your code base, you basically port that over to your GitHub repo, as it's called, and then there's this version of your code base that's sitting out there in GitHub. Well, so I said, I want you to look at my GitHub repo and guided learning journey, which is the name of that repo inside GitHub, which you'll find in the already connected GitHub account integration. That is in settings in my Claude, it shows connected to my GitHub repo. So, and I want you to evaluate the code base for various opportunities, for enhancement and so on. And said, okay, I'll help you analyze that repository. Let me find it in your Google Drive. What? And so I stopped it and I said, wait, you said, um, you know, let me search that might be in your drive, but look at the attached screenshot. My GitHub account is currently connected to Claude. Why then do you say you don't have access to GitHub? Oh, you're absolutely right. And I apologize for confusion. I can see from your screenshot that GitHub is indeed connected to your Claude account. The issue is that while GitHub is connected as an integration, I don't currently have a specific tool function available to directly search or access GitHub repositories in this conversation. What?
What what would be the purpose then?
Anyway, so then I had to bail out. I tried, I went on and on with Claude. Now, oh, by the way, I wanted to use Opus. Okay, so this was I had set in Claude, I had set Opus as the model that I'm talking to. So I thought, well, Opus is really the ne plus ultra, so I'm going to use them to do this evaluation of my GitHub repo. And it failed to even understand how it could access its own integration with the thing. So I went to Perplexity, and Perplexity gave me a whole bunch of weirdness about, okay, click on the GitHub icon in Claude. Well, there's only one GitHub icon in Claude. It's at the connect thing. I think I ultimately understand that I'm going to have to disconnect from GitHub, reconnect it again because it's something that's been messed up in that integration. It's probably not, I'm trying to be generous here. It's
Yeah.
probably not Claude's fault. It's a problem with my setup of the integration, although there's nothing that I can do other than disconnect because it says clearly that it's connected.
Well, it's the age-old tech support, right? Turn it on, turn it off, and turn it on again. Unplug it, replug it in.
It's you, it's not us.
Well, what's
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
is that Perplexity knows how to answer all of this stuff, but Claude has to throw up its hands and say, I don't know. I don't have a tool, so I can't help you.
Because Perplexity is a search tool.
Yeah.
Well,
Perplexity
yeah.
started as a search tool to get answers. Claude is new to search and clearly doesn't know to search its own documentation.
Right.
Brian just said, just join, so it's Claude the new meta. No, Brian, I don't think that's if you just joined, you heard a little bit of Andy talking about it not connecting, but no, I would say no, it's not the
Yeah.
I mean, this definitely goes back to the intent of, hey, we just wanted to make this work on the API level. We can we we'll spend some more time polishing up the front end user interface.
Yeah, exactly. And there's one other deficiency, let's say, compared to the competition right now in that space, which is that the context window for Claude 4 Sonnet is 200,000 compared to 1 million or 2 million, depending on your subscription level for Gemini Pro 2.5. And also at OpenAI, you have coding models that have 1 million token context windows. Now, if you're going to look at my whole GitHub repo and understand it in its totality, of course, I was sidetracked by this inability to look at it at all. But as I clicked it off, I was thinking, oh, this is probably going to run into a problem because of that limited context window. It's not going to be able to look at all the code at the same time. There's
It's
more than 200,000 tokens in that code base.
what I found interesting about that in my perplexity research of this, the deep research before the show, was it actually positioned the 200,000 contexts. I agree with you. That seems like a limitation as a purposeful and meaningful move by Claude. Not that it cannot have a larger context window, but it flies in the face of what they're trying to do from the enterprise side, which is to say that this is super reliable. You're going to get great answers from it. You're going to get less hallucinations. And we know that sometimes bigger context windows can elicit worse hallucinations and worse performance simply because even though it's able to ingest a million tokens or that's part of the context window, recency bias and other issues cause issues down the line. I just had a client recently, not on Anthropic, it was OpenAI, but she was using 4.1 and she was like, "Hey, I thought I had 1 million context, but when I put in X, Y, and Z, the top of the answer is always near correct or perfect. Once it gets past issue 4, it starts going downhill quick." She's like, but what's going on?" And I was like, I had to explain. I was like, "Well, yes, true, larger context window, but we've seen through Gemini, Google's getting better at it now, but Google early on with like 1.5 and stuff, there was a disconnect between simply having a 1 or 2 million and actually being able to do needle in the haystack type um research and poll and prompts and stuff like that, which by the way, I do believe 2.5 is at that level now, but they weren't. So it's interesting, Andy, like, there's this negative we see, like, they don't have as large of a context window. And to your point, that holds me back. And then whether it's just good marketing or strategy to turn around and say, that's on purpose. We could certainly be bigger. We choose not to because of the way we want to go slow and slowly develop and roll out things. So I don't know, you know. Carl, you joined us a bit ago. We've been talking all about not just Sonnet 4 and Opus 4, which are definitely part of the conversation. That's the biggest news that came out. But this is a bigger discussion about Anthropic's 2025 strategy, obviously huge plays in the enterprise area, big investments from both and from Amazon and Google, larger on about twice as much on the Amazon side as Google, which by the way, they invested 8 billion and it's now already worth 11 billion to Amazon. So they're doing okay with their investment. Google's a little different. They don't have a seat on the board. But it does allow them to have Claude as part of through what is it, Vertex? I always forget what like the connectors are and stuff like that.
Vers-
But anyway, Claude. Anyway, Carl, what what is your take sort of on what you've seen with Anthropic, especially like even in 2025? Obviously, we have these new models. Where do you see this going? What's their strategic play as you see it this year?
Um, I was just listening to a couple like different podcasts this weekend about the release, and I think the big piece was, um, are they leaning entirely in the coding aspect to get to AGI? And that is, to enable people to create and have software engineers build things so easy, um, hence connecting it to Cursor, hence connecting it to VSC, VCS, like that ability to do that and make it easier and easier. The thought was that would be the path, the fastest path to get to AGI, because it seems that that's what they're leaning into. Like if you watch their entire live stream, the focus was not on consumers. The focus was on developers. One, two, like Jumi and I were there. And if you were a consumer, that I would say 75, 85% of that whole presentation meant nothing to you. You're like, I don't know what this thing does.
Hmm.
And but that was so fun though, because as developers, as someone who knows how to develop too, it's like, oh my goodness, now the ability to code with Claude got a significant improvement. The ability, MCPs got a significant improvement. The ability to build, significant improvement. Even just one-shotting Opus 4, significant improvement. So enabling people to build things, that's where they're leaning on, then maybe that would be the strategy in getting to AGI. So that I think that's where it looks at, because benchmarks don't really mean anything, but then if you look against the benchmarks some initial benchmarks in terms of thinking and so on, it's very good at coding, but everything else is kind of equal or just a slight below. So it isn't like the super state of the art. So
I,
that's you can from their actions, it seems that's where they're going.
I'll make a bold statement here, and I'd be curious what you guys think, or anybody in the comments who's live joining us. By the way, thank you to everybody in the live chat along with this. If you want to join us, just know that we do this show Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, and so you could always come over to YouTube and join all the lovely people in our chat. Welcome to some new names and faces I'm seeing there. Welcome Brian, some other folks in there who are participating. Thank you. It means a lot to us. We read all of them. They're right here on the side of our screen. We pull them into the conversation as much as we can. But just know that they're influencing how we're interacting and responding, even if we don't bring those on screen. So just wanted to say that, but shoot, I said all that just to lose my point of what I was going to say to you, Carl. Jeez, isn't that amazing? What was I going to say about that? It was about it.
It's a bold statement. You were going
Bold statement. Thank you, Andy. Jeez, thank God, Andy. Bold statement, Brian. I think in my use of 4 in Opus and Sonnet so far, I think 4 is everything ChatGPT 5 hopes to be. And this is what I mean by that. They have done a phenomenal job, in my opinion, Anthropic with Claude, even on the consumer side, which I agree that is not maybe their biggest focus. It's the enterprise and the API side of it, and now MCP, right? But when you use 4, you get the sense that it does not care what you throw at it. It will figure out the best path forward. And if that means on the Opus side, I did over an hour of research to build out a market analysis, strategic market analysis. As an example, I did it in EV. In fact, it's right here on my screen. I'll just show it to you on market analysis. And it did a phenomenal job of breaking it all down. But as you would have to see at the bottom here, usage limit reached. It'll reset at 1 p.m. Right. So Opus, I thought it might, by the way, but Opus chewed through my limits on the pro account. I would need to move up to max, which is much, much more expensive. But you could understand why companies would just barely flinch at paying $200 a month for Claude, even on the public side. And you can see here, as it's gathering through, it had no issue taking this is the prompt on the right-hand side, okay? Very detailed, lots going on. I would not dare do something like this back in the day with a prompt. You just simply wouldn't, right? Beth, like when we were teaching early prompting, you wouldn't even think about sending a prompt like that in at one time and being like, yeah, by the way, do this whole small paper that's really a prompt and just figure it out. Just figure it out. And then Claude rather goes through and you can see as it's breaking everything down with initial results for every one of them. Now I'd have to go through and validate this. And this is V1, this is V2. I'd have to go through and validate and look at a lot of this stuff. But my point is, it doesn't seem to matter with Claude, at least from what I can see with 4. And it's a big difference is if I ask it to write a funny rhyme, if I ask it to do really creative stuff, which we've known Claude has been good at for a long time. Claude just seems to have a better sense of doing creative writing, at least in my opinion. Coding, a massive improvement of coding. It will build. I demoed it last week where it would build that whole solar system thing. It'll do phenomenal in coding. So it's amazing at coding. It's good at creative writing, and it seems to have no problem whether you give it a massive prompt or a small one and figuring out what to do next in a true multimodal way. That's the hope and promise to me of what they're saying GPT-5 is going to do is it's going to bring it all together, less independent tools, and you just simply will ask and it will deliver based on what it feels like is the best move to it. That to me is the promise of a great user experience.
I think though the key fact for me, the one thing that I won't be using Claude outside of code is because of how O3 remembers literally everything that I've done. Like it's pulling the ability for it to pull conversations from a couple weeks ago now it's starting to really remember. So it's like, hey, for example, like this week, hey, I need to revise my training plan to do this because I have this, and and I want to get prepped for a game this day, not this day. And it's like, oh yeah, based on. And then last week I'm like, hey, my hip flexor is a little off. It took that into account. It's like, hey, your hip flexor is about 6 days away. You're still pretty good, but do this to take into account. And it built the plan. I didn't say anything about a hip flexor. It included that. And that was like 4 or 5 days ago. I was like, that ability itself, I was like, I don't know how I can leave that when I have all that memory now every day, every single client, every single thing that we talk about. Very difficult to kind of go back and forth. Yeah, it's a little tough to do, and that memory piece is outstanding, right? Now the question I have though is, does Claude have the I don't think they have the image generation, and I don't think they have, like, there's a couple multimodal things that we're still waiting for if Claude will put put that out too, right?
You probably
Right.
said to say it's multimodal might be a misstatement. Yeah, I agree with that.
But
Yeah.
that's
That, and
something
that's
Right.
that's just something that I think Claude has done really well is limit their vision, right?
Yeah.
They do what they do well. The place I think Claude falls down is that they don't like they're focused on the user to help them have a great experience, but when they're going to cut the user off, they're not focused on the great experience, right? Like, heads up, right? Like,
Yeah.
I am not feeling this right now, and you have like 100 words left. Would you like me to stop and summarize for you
Yeah.
or something in that? But I do feel like Claude, out of everybody, has really made an art form out of keeping a narrow vision and doing as much as they can with that. And that has paid off, right? I don't know that they want you to stop using, memory with ChatGPT, right? They will Carl, they want you to feel like, "Oh, well, maybe I can do the $100 plan for you, the 140, terribly sorry, Canada." Um, of the 5 times limits,
Yeah.
and then get to the place of like, "You know what? That 20 times limit would be so sweet right now," and then, like, move you on that
Yeah.
way.
It's the thing is though, I think most people, it's all your uses, right? Because like, if you think about it, the what would you call this? Um, the okay, I'll just say it. The cheap way to do this is open like 6 different accounts and all doing, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can do it that way. But the thing is you won't get the thread or the context.
Yeah.
So
You're gonna need to subscribe to ChatGPT's memory to keep track of all of what each account is doing.
yeah.
Ugh.
So you can do it that way if you have individual tasks. But like, I do questions like outside of like people who use it on a regular basis. Obviously, $20 a month for 4. Like, if you want to do Claude, Gemini, that's 60 for Canadians, probably 100, whatever, every month for the top 3 models. You get the plus account. It's like, but I don't think most people need it. But I think everyone's trying to go, the true power users are gonna want whatever it is, the 200, 280. I think Gemini's $339 in Canadian
Yeah.
dollars. That's insane, to
I
use
mean,
models.
but is it, right? I mean, I think again, it all goes back to
Yeah. What will you use it
our
for?
affinity, right? Yeah. What do you and the same thing with Claude, Max. It's like I think Max is $200 a month or whatever. And you
Yeah.
can see I did that whole market analysis. No, what is it, Beth? Do you know what it is?
It's
280 Canadian.
it's both. You can do 5 times the
Yes.
plus limit or the $20 limit. You can do 5 times the $20 limit for 100, 20 times the $20 limit for 200.
Oh, actually, like that, and I didn't know that. I actually like that limit because you can just, like you said, you can bump up where you need to without having to go all in on it. I mean, look, I will say this, I do quite a bit of not just building on the custom GPTs and stuff like that with scale, but I also do a lot of training and build a lot of trainings. When I'm doing an SOW and proposing and saying, look, I'd like to do I feel like your sales team could use a 6-week training course. The one that sometimes gets scratched is Claude. What never gets scratched is OpenAI. And I kind of insist that Perplexity doesn't get scratched, even if they say they don't know what Perplexity is. That's more of as a consulting, I'm telling you, your guys need training on, your whole sales team needs training on Perplexity. That just goes along with it. But I just did have a client that finished and they're like, Claude sounds amazing. But for us, a sales team, it feels redundant to what you would show us and what we would already be paying for in OpenAI. And the reality is, from that viewpoint, that perspective, not building them solutions in 8.8n, or they're not I don't typically do trainings for enterprise level companies. That does make sense. And I do understand why a company would say, let's just focus on ChatGPT and OpenAI right now. Only this week do I have somebody where we're going to be talking more about Gemini because their company just invested in there and they really, really want to know about gems and Gemini and stuff like that. But that doesn't happen as much. It is still the large, Carter, shaking your head. You probably agree, right? The lion's share is still ChatGPT.
Yes, and it's either that or Copilot. It's one of those
Yeah.
two. There will be like for us, it's like there is one or two people who use Perplexity. They just heard about it. But it's very rare outside of that, and maybe a Google. Honestly, I haven't run into any companies that we work with that are running Google, but there are a couple people who use Google as part of their like the Google workspace.
Mhm.
But that what's interesting is the custom GPTs. Have you built projects and there's just not enough uses, right? Because custom GPTs, as long as you have an OpenAI account, doesn't matter, you can use it. But with custom GPT, I mean, with projects, the person has to kind of like have a Claude account.
Mm.
And I don't even, is it a free account? Like, I don't know if they can use it if it's free account or it's only, I'm not sure.
I will say Claude's free side is very limiting.
Yeah.
I would not suggest to somebody dive in deep as much as we have all talked about how things we love with Claude. If you're only going to do it from the free side, I would say that may not be your play.
Yep.
It's not.
And you can't access Opus 4 on a free account.
Yeah.
It's not very generous. You really have to pay to play with Claude.
Like,
Yeah, I want to
can
jump
you
in.
access?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Can you access Sonnet on the free Perplexity? Because if you can, just go to Perplexity because you're going to get a bunch of other.
I think on the free Perplexity, you're not allowed to choose your model, or at least
Oh, it's only Sonar.
Well, it's even worse. Okay. That's what makes Microsoft so stupid. You can't use anything. You're like, what am I doing? Okay.
Look, not to say that these free versions that's a good thing is to have free versions, especially if you're not experienced in the AI space. So if you're just catching up or just, diving in, yeah, cut your teeth on that. But this kind of goes to some conflict I have with the more expensive, models. It makes it makes AI have less access for more people. So it'll be harder to find the $1 billion one person company if you have to charge $200 to $300 for the models and the technology that's going to give you the ability to do that. And my personal opinion is lower the bar. You will get far more return in the long run for all of humanity, if you have these less expensive, vectors of entry. Sure, there's always going to be the argument of how much it costs and those kinds of things. But if you can do anything you can to just offer more access to everything, I like the concept of when they say, oh, okay, you're going to get 50 of these on the pro account, but you're going to get 10 or 5 in your lower account. That's fine. Because I need to see the value. I need to figure it out, especially when you say, here are these models, you figure out a solution or you figure out how you're going to apply it. Well, I need to be able to use them. And, and unless you are a business or unless you have the funds to be a power user, then you won't have. That's a barrier to entry. Not to say that the value isn't there, but just to keep in mind on that approach. I'll leave it there.
So one of the better opportunities to take a free account and get high level capabilities is aistudio.google.com. I don't have a paid account. I have an individual workspace account, but I don't have a paid Gemini account. And yet I have access to a 1 million context window and 2.5 Pro at AI Studio. And I have this experience of using that to overcome the context window limitations of Lovable, because I can keep copying and pasting code and chat conversations from my Lovable dialogue with the coding agent there into that same interface, AI Studio. And they have a nice little counter at the top right that shows your 1 million context window and how far you've gone through that. And I on one exchange that was a long, debugging operation, Pro 2.5 Pro experimental was giving me really, really good and very articulate advice on what to say to Lovable, giving it to me as a cut and pastable entry, and then put that in. And then I eventually got to the 1 million context window, but it took days to do that. That's a very big window. During that time, that meant that Google Gemini was keeping all of the exchange all the way back to when I started in that thing in its context memory. Okay. Then I was surprised when I had to leave that chat, start a new chat to get another 1 million, ready to work with. It remembered the prior conversation. So I'm saying, without knowing, I'm saying Gemini has memory too, because otherwise it wouldn't go from one chat to the next. It maintained knowledge of the conversation I had that exhausted 1 million tokens when I opened a new chat, and I still had used only 20,000 of the million. So it could refer back to that other conversation. So that was pretty impressive. I'm not paying a dime for that.
That's really great. And I would say that it's interesting that you bring that up, because that's something that I noticed that was not desirable trying to edit images using AI Studio, where like, no, pink blazer was the last conversation we had. Please, no pink blazer this time. This is not what we're talking about now, right? Like that kind of piece could be a positive and a negative, but really interesting that that it's able to do that for you, Andy. I love that. Does anybody have any final conversation wrap up we want to do? Brian had to jump.
Uh, oh, go ahead, Carl.
Shoot, trying to find.
Well, all I was gonna say was, I'd love to hear what people like from our community, or anybody who watches us, to join up with our community Slack channel and let us know what are the projects that you plan on using, or what has been your personal experience with using the new stuff from Anthropic. I know Garrett's already looking at MCP implementations and things like that, so I'm excited to see what comes out of applying the new tech.
I wanted to say, I was trying to look for the tab that this was on and I couldn't find it. So I was like, I didn't know if I was muted or not. So I was like, I think just on the MCP part, it's definitely, if you have Claude, download the desktop app and definitely try MCPs. It's super, super easy to, add the MCP into your using the developer console. Not all of them work. And also many of them they aren't as smooth as you think. People make a big deal out of it, but they're like, I can't read this, or I have like it's a work in progress. What I am interested in is the new Zapier OpenAI MCP. So you can go into the OpenAI playground and connect very, very easily the Zapier module. I don't know if you have to pay for Zapier. I know we did for a year, but um, that was before N8N, so we're probably going to be off that. But the ability to connect to their app library is pretty significant. So definitely try out. But they're having that Claude MCP. Like I was just running it off Google Analytics, something I found. It actually does a really good job. Like pure analytics, if you can connect it to a Power BI, a Tableau, I think a Salesforce is out there somewhere, a HubSpot. Not sure what it can call, what the tools are available, but worth just checking it out, and it's simple copy and paste.
That's lovely.
I have one quick thing, a little quick update. I was looking to find the email that was sent to me by Lovable Support, and I see that on Saturday, just 3 days ago, they sent out an update, their Lovable update, May 24th. It says, in the last 2 weeks, we've made Lovable a lot better by fixing bugs and more. Lovable now uses Claude 4. And they have a big logo on that email, Claude's logo and Lovable side by side. So that's the first time they've ever really announced that they have, a specific model underneath the hood.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that we're gonna be seeing those across all of the code helpers and things like that. But I think this is a great place to wrap it up for the day. Always a great conversation, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in the chat and who are watching us on YouTube and all of our various channels. We will be back tomorrow with the news, where a very caffeinated Junmi will lead you through some of the more exciting information that has come out from the past week. If you haven't already, please click the bell, like, subscribe. All of that is very helpful to us and continue to grow the show. And thank you, everyone, for joining our community. You can join the Slack channel from dailyai.showcommunity.com. And of course, remember, we also have the newsletter to give you a nice little wrap up of all the things that we talked about and explore a little deeper into some of the subjects. And you can sign up for that and follow the greatest or the latest news from us in the dailyaishow.com. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, and aloha.